Okay, hi everyone, and a very warm welcome to today's LEAP webinar with our phenomenal title being Resource Management Strategy Fundamentals with Carrie Kilford and Martha Arias-Webster. I'm Nora, I'm your host for today's session, and my passion lies in helping organizations and individuals unlock their full potential by creating more adaptive, soulful, and joyful ways of working. And to get us started, we have prepared a little poll. So Edom, feel free to kick it off. We are curious to see, do you have a resource management strategy in place currently? You might don't have a formal strategy currently. Maybe you have started to capture a strategy. You perhaps even have a solid strategy in place, and maybe even beyond that, you not only have a solid strategy, but you also regularly review and update it. So feel free to get your selection, your vote in now. We're very curious to see where everyone is at so that we can also tailor this webinar especially for you. Awesome. Okay, there is a clear picture forming. We've got about 50% of all votes going for we don't have a formal strategy in place. So thank you very much for your vote, and very happy you're here because I hope that this very topic will be valuable to you. Awesome. So this webinar is part of Run's LEAP webinar program called LEAP Igniting the Future of Resource Management. And at Run, we believe resource management is a lot more than just schedules and spreadsheets. It's actually about creating smarter, more human-centered ways of working. And with LEAP, with our webinar series, our goal is to challenge the traditional approach to resource management, spark fresh ideas, and bring inspiring new perspectives to the resource management community so that we can all grow and learn together. Together, we're exploring what the future of resource management could look like. We'll use the last 15 minutes in today's sessions for any questions that you might have. So as you're listening into our conversation today, as you're reflecting on your own resource management strategy, feel free to share any reflections in the chat and any questions in the Q&A section here in Zoom webinar so that we can pick it up and hopefully address all of them. And you can also share any reactions here in Zoom webinar. We always love to know you're there and make this as interactive as possible. And now it's my absolute pleasure to introduce today's speakers. So we've got Martha Arias-Webster with us. She has spent her career helping organizations get smarter about how they plan and use their people. She's led teams that have saved millions each year through more efficient resource practices. And she's also helping shape the industry standards as a board member of the RMI. And what stands out is how she combines that strategic vision with real and very practical know-how. So welcome, Martha. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here on the LEAP stage once again.
Thank you.
Nice. And also with us in our webinar today, currently being challenged by some firewalls. So hopefully she will be able to join us very shortly. She's definitely working on it, is Carrie Kilford, who leads the resource operations at Kinetic in the UK. And Carrie has over 20 years of experience across project management, business operations, and resourcing. And for the past 8 years, she's been at the helm of Kinetic's resourcing team. That means she has responsibility for planning and deploying more than 2,500 engineers, scientists, and technicians. So no small feat, definitely. She's also been instrumental in building frameworks and structures that make resource management work at such a scale. So hopefully we'll be able to also welcome her to our panel shortly. And until that is the case, let's already kick off. Martha, very, very happy to have you back here. You've been an absolute legend here on the Leap stage. And I would love to kick off by taking a step back, looking at resource management as a practice. And imagine you would explain what resource management is to a 12-year-old. So without using any buzzwords or terms, how would you describe it to someone who is basically going to school? What analogies pop into your mind that help convey the essence of it?
Yeah, sure. So in looking at this, I was really thinking about just practical examples that anyone can relate to. And how I was thinking about resource management was comparing it to your grocery list for the week. So you need to plan for how much you're going to use and consume. You want to make sure to have enough food stocked up, but not too much that you end up having to throw things out at the end of the week or by week. You want to plan for, big events and unexpected events. So if you're going to have a few nights out and that's a special occasion, or if you're going to invite people over to the house, you want to plan for that too. So those are different demand needs. And then you want to think about, what your household or organization needs. You want to think about your vegetables, your starches, your juices, your milk. And so you want to think about your household's needs. And so thinking about all those things, you want to be flexible in how you plan. You want to have some good substitutions, things that you're going to consistently use and need from week to week. And then you might have some specialty items, right? So things like toothpaste or garbage bags, things that you can't really substitute, you're going to need. And so that's how I was thinking about it. So I think about that and I kind of think about it being akin to, your team members and how they might have specialized skills and how you might have, or you might have generalized skills, like skills that you're going to need regardless of what. And then you don't want to have too many or too little people. So that's how I was thinking about it.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you so much. And I can already imagine how well equipped and well planned your household must be with all of these skills being present at home, at your home. Amazing. So now let's pick up a really important and relevant theme for many resource managers out there at the moment. We saw this very much at the Resource Management Institute conference this year in April. So let's also focus on that for one moment. So when we think about the case for resource management, can you maybe elaborate from your perspective, why does it matter today more than ever? What is the essence of the criticality and the urgency for resource management?
Yeah, I think like across the last 3 years, let's say, what we really saw was um, teams and even organizations having challenges with predicting their resource needs. So they have certain periods where they're expecting demand to spike and they're going on these hiring sprees. And then a few years later, there's these discussions about layoffs. So really, I think about the key enabler for resource management is to really think ahead and be adept at looking at what's happening in your workforce, in the market. How is your demand going? Are you getting a lot of new sales? Are you getting a lot of new needs? And being flexible in how you're adjusting to those changes in demand and then also supply. So you could have situations like after COVID, there was big spikes in people changing jobs. So that's where your resource supply, that's kind of how we call it in the industry. But we can also call them people talent. You might have challenges with your people talent to where you're losing performers and they're going to other organizations. So you want to be really making the case for resilience in your staffing plan and understanding what's coming.
Mm.
I would also say right now, there's so much talk maybe about the last 2 years on AI. So really thinking about what your organization needs in terms of the future of work, what skills do you need, what skills do people need to be learning? Those are all things that are central to resource management. And so I think if you can package that up, you really make a good case for why resource management is needed.
Amazing, thank you. And this makes me just think about our analogy earlier of basically planning out your groceries and making sure all of your household supplies are available. And this is especially relevant if we think about the world we live in today, right? Also with your supplies of people, as you alluded to, with this uncertainty, with this volatility, complexity that we are currently in, right? This is just, yeah, basically what we have to deal with. So it gives a competitive advantage, right? If you're really able to look into the future, if you're able to make good decisions today based on what you can forecast and anticipate. I think resiliency is a very good keyword in that context. So thank you so much for outlining why we need resource management right now. You mentioned something that I find super interesting, and I hope this is also the case for some of our participants today. You mentioned in one of our prep calls that as a resource management function, you are an internal service provider. And I think this is a very helpful almost attitude or position to understand yourself. How can I serve the different parts of the business? And you provided something to us that I would love to share, and maybe you can walk us through basically how you use this. So I'll just quickly pop it onto the screen. There we go. Cool. So what are we seeing here, and how are you utilizing this in your context?
Yeah. So this is really like when our team launched here at Jobs for the Future, I really had to sit back and not only think about my charter, which I know we're going to get into today, but also think about in support of my charter when I talk to different units across the company. At that time, we didn't have resource management. So this is going back 2.5 years now. So you're going an organization, you may be setting up resource management for the first time. And so a lot of parts of your organization may not really know what resource management is. And so, in addition and in support of the charter, this is a document that me and my team came up with, and we said, let's really lay out our service offerings for our internal clients or partners. So, we want them to know how we can support them in their day to day operations and why this is going to actually help them, right? So you want people to engage with your process and not go around your process, right? They're
Mhm.
used to ways of working at that time and you're bringing in something new. So you want to build this awareness and say, this is how we can help you. So my team came up with these 5 key points. So this is part of our anytime we have a new leader, we do a roadshow deck, like a roadshow presentation, and we'll include our charter and we also include this, and we even go deeper into this. So just diving into the 5 points, you're really saying here's a key feature. We have advanced awareness of resource shortages and needs. And because we're doing this monthly review of our demand and forecast and planning. And so we have that awareness of where we're going to have gaps. So you want, as a client, for them to come to you early and often, right? So when they have a project, you want to have that interlock with them so that you can highlight, oh, look, you need this type of team members. There's a shortage area there. Or, you want to be able to connect that work to your team members. You want to know that it's coming too, right? So you want to tell them, hey, we're always looking at this. And if you ever have any questions, like, let's talk about your proposals. Let's talk about the work that you're pitching so that we can make sure that we're ready by the time that work comes in. So that's that advanced awareness. That also can be used for leadership, right? Like if you're talking to executive leadership, you're saying, this is a function that we do. We review this monthly. We can share this with you so you can be aware of where we're having, demand pickup and we might need to talk about hiring. or surpluses, and we might need to talk about maybe there's some internal opportunities that we can put our staff on during those times. In terms of the second bullet, staffing and hiring for the enterprise, that's really, we'll go to business units and say, you might have a need and you might feel that you need to hire, but we have this data and we can actually support you in a business case to hire for this project. So it's not that you have to go it alone. We have all this information, we're looking at it, we're pulling it. We can help support you in that case. So that's why you'd want to come to us, business unit client. The third one is solutions for staffing challenges. So, are you having a challenge in one of your projects? Is it moving behind schedule? Well, let's talk about what we can do to add resources. Or we're also looking at when people give notice or when they go on a leave of absence. We are looking at that and we'll actually notify you,
Mm.
right, to say, here's what we can do. We can help you backfill this so you don't have to have all that stress and anxiety about what you're going to do with this project, right? We want to make sure that you can focus on the end client and the strategy of this project so we can help support you there. And then the strategic skill management gets into, managing the skills database and understanding all the people have certain skills. So if you're working on a proposal and you need certain specialized skills, right? Do you know who the people are? Our people are moving. We have new people coming in. We have people exiting the organization. You have organizations that are growing. They may be thousands of people in size. So the business unit leader may not know who's the best person for a certain skill. And that's where you can come to resource management. And then proposal support. So thinking about who you need, you're putting together a proposal and you need to think about specialized team members who are going to have availability. We tell our clients, involve us because we'd hate for you to put a certain person as the lead for a project. The project comes in, but the
Mm.
person's over allocated. And now what do? We're moving
Classic.
down. It's not a great experience for the individual. It may leave you in a situation where we have to come up with a name that the client didn't expect. So let's be proactive and partner. And so this is kind of how we put out our way to gain buy-in from the different business units and have them see the value that we can bring to them, right? It's not just about this is the process. It's about the value that you're giving to them when they engage with you as a resource management department.
I love this so much, Martha, and thanks so much for sharing it. Just for everyone listening in, you can, of course, grab a screenshot, but we will also be sharing this in our follow-up email. So this is Martha's gift for you. Thank you so much for it. And it's so interesting when we think about one of our topics that comes up again and again is the need to shift from a tactical, operational focus to also a more of a strategic approach to resource management. And I think what you've done here is not just be proactive, but it's already the next level of proactivity because you're already communicating it proactively and you're doing it in such a user-centric way because you're basically communicating the value. So what is important to the different stakeholders, and you already, kind of translated it to something that makes sense for them and is valuable for them. So I think this is brilliant. And if you're in the position of currently setting up a new practice, maybe this is a great starting point, something I would refer to as best practice. So awesome. Thank you, Martha. Now let's dive into the last of kind of our points that are considering the why of resource management, which is basically how can resource management improve outcomes when we think about teams and organizational levels? How would you basically synthesize the outcomes on these two different levels?
Yeah, I would say, there's so many aspects where resource management leads to improved outcomes, but I think if you're project based, which is really where a lot of where resource management resides, is not just the forecasting, which we talked about, being proactive and staying ahead of the game, knowing where you need to pivot as an organization. But there's an aspect here on cost efficiency, right? So, really thinking about how do you design effective teams, making sure teams are balanced, right? You don't want to have one project that has all your best team members, right? You want to have some new team members, maybe newer to the organization or growing in their career paths, so where they can work alongside more senior staff. And so you can have a variety of different levels of expertise, different, even cost levels, right? So again, you don't have your most senior costly employees on one project and then that budget is huge, right? You want to think about what you need and what you need to deliver well and what you need to grow your team. So that includes a balanced team, um, cost efficient team, right? That's aligned with your business model of how your margin works and things like that. Um, and you also want to think about having the skills that are needed for the work because you want to end up delivering for the client on time,
Mhm.
right? Within budget, right? And according to client satisfaction. So you want all those things there. And a lot of that does have to do with understanding the skills needed, the level of skills needed. And so that you can get to those outcomes. And so globally across the company, you end up with successful projects that lead to more work for your organization. And I think those are the things that really impact some of the things that may be in support of this include prioritizing projects. So, knowing what are your top projects. So, if you need to make trade offs, if you need to get in that scenario where you need your top player in this one area to be on this project, you want to know the why. So,
Mhm.
why are we pulling this person off? Maybe this is a marquee client for your organization. Maybe, they come to you repeatedly and you don't want to damage that business, right? You want to maintain it, you want to keep your clients happy. So, you want to know the why, and the prioritization really helps you support that. Um, and I think with all those things, then you're in a really good place to have satisfied team members that are growing, that are staying, and clients that are happy, and a finance team that's happy too, right? Because it's leading to better outcomes for the company.
Yeah, amazing. Yes. So basically, in a nutshell, resource management helps the whole organization to be happy. Love that. Thank you so much.
Good.
And I can already see the first questions coming in, which is awesome. So please follow suit, capture your questions. What we'll actually try out this time for the first time is a bit of a webinar overflow so that we can actually tackle all the questions. So your question will be answered for sure. So keep them coming. We would love to hear from you. Awesome. So you have very beautifully outlined the why of resource management, why it's important now, how we can communicate the value in very different ways. I loved your way of how you can communicate it to your internal clients as a service provider, really highlighting the proactive nature of resource management. So with that, I think we've laid a really good foundation when it comes to the value proposition of resource management. Now I'm really, really keen to dive deep into the what. So here, now we have an opportunity to dive into the key focus areas of a resource management strategy. So what are some of the core components that form the foundation of a resource management strategy? And when we take a step back, Martha, when you think about when you started off, what was in retrospective the most important and first step that you would advise others starting out now to take? What is number one?
Number one is, what we do, like, right, is your charter. So that's laying out the purpose and the scope of the resource management department. And that really should define the team levels, roles, and responsibilities. And it lays out to clients what can they expect of you. So the service offering is a little bit different and in support of this charter. And I see you put up the charter template. So that's really great. We can go into that. Um, would you like to take us through that, or do you want me to kind of hop through this?
So feel free to hop through if there are any questions as you do so. To our dear audience, feel free to capture any questions and we can dive into more detail absolutely anytime.
Right. So really the scope is detailing what areas are you working on and looking at, and what processes are you running. In my, like I mentioned, that pitch deck, I think this can go in here once you define it. And in terms of like processes, we have like, I think at one point we had 7 key processes that we were owning. So I think it's important to call out what you're owning as a department, because you could be in support of other things, but again, you want clients to, or your team members or your department heads, to really have a clear understanding of what you're doing. And I see here time frame, what frequency you're doing what. So if you're running your forecasting, are you running it real time? Are there reports that are going out? And how frequently you're running it, and what's the time frame? Are you looking up to 6 months out? Are you looking up to 12 months out? And so we've delineated that in our charter. I think here in the description, it's just getting into more detail on what are some of those things that you're doing. I do think it's really important to call out your key performance indicators.
Mhm.
When my team launched at the company that I'm at, as I mentioned, people really didn't know what resource management was. So really defining, like, one of our key metrics is utilization, and that equals this, right? And we're
Mhm.
going to track that monthly. And this is good, what good means, and this is what not so good means, right? So I think you want to have that kind of fleshed out. Um, and then what are your data sources? That's something that you can really think about too. And then in support for your department, you can think about your standardized processes.
Mhm.
So running utilization, but what does it look like? You want things that support how your team runs. Like, on the first, we're running this. Who's running it on the team, right? You can get even more detailed in some of these things behind the scenes as you build out your function. And then over time, you can even go back and revisit this. Like, my charter started out with 7 elements that we owned, and now we've pulled it back to 5 or 6 because a new
Mhm.
department was launched, and we kind of had to decide who is owning this versus who is supporting it. And we went from being an owner to a supporter. So you want to go back and look at these things annually at least, because things
Mhm.
change in the organization. Um, Here in team roles, it's really just saying who does what in the department. What does the director of resource management do? What does the senior manager do? What does the manager do? What does your, if you have a resource coordinator, what does the resource coordinator do? And then you have your stakeholders and clients. And even in my department, we've even determine alignments, like, this person is the primary lead for these parts of the business
Nice.
versus this other person is the lead for those parts of the business. And again, those things can fluctuate year to year because departments change and department heads change and processes change. So this is a living document that, while it's really critical for you to define this early on, like, I don't want to say day one, but definitely your 1 to 3 months of launching, you want to have this there. You want to get feedback on it too. Some things, might be non-negotiable, right? Like, resource management is gonna do some supply and demand planning, or define our critical skills. And then you have your interdependencies, like, what other departments are you dependent on? Maybe data sources, even, because there might be data sources that you're dependent on as a unit, but they're managed by a different department, right?
Yeah.
This can also help you have those conversations with those units and say, hey, we need your data monthly. We're going to pull it on this cadence does that sound good to your team since you're the one updating the information?
Nice. Awesome. I'm just really curious about the key performance indicators, Martha. You mentioned that utilization has been one critical KPI in your context. Which other key KPIs would you advise for resource managers starting off to also have on the radar pretty much from the get-go?
Yeah, I mean, we have a KPI that actually we launched maybe 6 months in. Um, it's probably a little bit more evolved than some functions do. Like we wanted to make a connection for like how well we were doing for our clients internally of giving them the type of resources they need. So we do a survey to our clients on satisfaction. Like, did we give you the person who can deliver, who has the skills that you needed? How are they doing? So we can get feedback on how we're doing. So if we need to change, we have indicators that we can rely on. And then we also get feedback from our department on, okay, the people that we're staffing, how did we do of matching you to work that matches your skills so that you can deliver work? So those KPIs that we look at. Externally, you might look at your client satisfaction scores if you have those. And then we also look at, which is probably a higher priority than maybe some of those client satisfaction scores, but like speed to delivery and time to staff. So those are pretty important so you can see how your process is working.
Yeah, very nice. Thank you so much. I think having a clear view on the KPIs and starting to track them early on is just helping each RMO, each resource manager to really prove and yeah, make it transparent what the value is that you're bringing to the business, right? So that you can start to grow a team, which of course then can have a lot more impact than just a single resource manager. So awesome. Thank you so much. What is next, Martha? Once we've got a clear resourcing charter template and we're starting to communicate that to the different stakeholders of the business, we're getting a bit maybe more noticed as a RM function. What do you think is the next most important step for our new resource management function from a strategic perspective?
Yeah, I think right after that, your skills inventory. So understanding all of the team members that your organization is supporting as a RM function, and then understanding people's skills,
Nice.
um, so that you can put them on the projects that maximize what they can do and also what they're learning. So I think, like when I came in, I was shocked that our HR unit had already done a skill inventory. I was shocked. And on day one, I came in and I started learning the company, and they were already doing staffing. And I would not have made it past month one had I not had that skills inventory, because we were getting requests after requests after requests. And I would have had to have, several hundred people's names and skills memorized. And that's not feasible, right? Like some people think, oh, I know who does this and I know who does that, but it's evolving.
Yes.
And when you have an influx of a certain amount of like type of work, if you need to find more resources, that's going to be your saving grace to finding those resources and helping get them on projects, especially
Yeah.
those high projects, right? You need to move fast. You need to be able to deliver the right people for the right work and help them so that they can be doing their best work out there. So that is really next up.
Amazing. And can you just make it a bit more concrete in your context, jobs for the future? Like how many people, resources are under your belt and how many skills have you defined? Because that's actually a challenge, right? How detailed do you go? How high level do you go? And how do you do that breakdown? So can you maybe just walk us through a little bit of how it looks like in your world so that we can maybe get some inspiration?
Yeah, I mean, my resource management function manages about 200 resources. So a smaller shop, like I know others, it's like in the thousands or the several, hundreds. And we stick with the RMI guidance of like no more than 200 skills.
Mhm,
Um, and we have probably 7 to 10 overarching categories.
mhm,
So we have functional skills, and then we have things like subject matter expertise and what we call like population or industry sector knowledge. So we capture all that. And yeah, so we stick with the 200 skills. We did a big revision to our skill database this last year, which took a while, took a few months. We included focus groups. We really wanted to hear, we expanded our skill survey to different parts of the business as well. And we wanted to hear as we were expanding, is there anything that we should be asking that we're not asking?
mhm,
And one of the helpful rules of thumb is you don't want to capture everything that everyone can do. You
mhm,
want to capture what's needed for the kind of work that your organization is delivering. So you really need to know, okay, what are we delivering today? And what do we think we're going to deliver in the next year? Like, are we coming up with some new products and we need to ask for these certain types of skills? Um, do we need to add, like for all of you on the call, like, do you need to add like AI knowledge, different tools? Are you launching different tools and you want to know who knows different types of tools? Like, do you need Power BI, right? Should you be asking that? We 2 years ago added languages
mhm.
because occasionally people will come to us and say, I need a fluent Spanish speaker, and we didn't capture that in year one. So
Yeah.
we knew, okay, when we revisited, let's add languages, but what languages? So we had to do some digging and figure it out. We're probably asking a little bit more than what we need there, but we want to be prepared in case something comes up. So again, having those conversations on what are the right skills to ask. We don't
Mhm,
need to know everything that everybody does, right? But you might need it occasionally. So really think about that. And whenever we started to add a lot of new categories, I also was looking to see what categories we could remove because
mm.
you don't end up with 1,000 questions that you're asking people.
Exactly. Yes, then it's not helpful anymore. It's not practical. So I love that. So the rule of thumb, as little as possible, but enough to make it a useful skills inventory. That's brilliant. Very, very nice. Thank you so much. And I saw there was one question coming in regards to the skills. So I'm just going to pick that right now because we're just talking about it. Thank you so much, Andre. How do you evaluate the skill levels? Good question. Scores, grades, or just yes, no? Can you maybe share how you did it?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. We ask along 3 dimensions. So we ask, do you have the skill? If you don't have it, then just click no. But if you do have it, are you beginner? Are you intermediate? Are you expert? And we have let's say it's a 3 to 5 page survey guide that says, this is how we're defining beginner. This is how we're defining expert. This is how we're defining proficient. So that's really important. I can't tell you how many times I get that question, even, as we were doing these workshops and getting feedback every meeting. How are we defining? How are we defining? So you really want to put that definition out there.
Nice.
Um, and we had things like large companies, people would ask, how are you defining large? Small companies, how are you defining small? So we really had to be specific um, on that. So think about how you can be specific. And even this year, we did a pilot with HR because there's a lot of questions on how people determine if they're expert level.
Mhm.
Certification doesn't mean you have a PhD. Like there's such a big variance of what it means to be an expert and how someone can interpret that. Doesn't mean I did a 6 month project, right? So probably not, but so also did a pilot to say, okay, if you labeled yourself expert, um, if you're at this level, you shouldn't flag this more than 6 categories as expert. It's really hard to be an expert in more than 6 things. But then also give us a sample of a work output, a certification or something. So that's something that we piloted this year. And it required more investment. I've talked with others on the RMI board who've done this differently. They might look at number of hours if their system tracks hours per task. We
Mm.
don't have that, so that's really interesting. And then also other organizations might have a manager that has to validate every person in their team that did expert level, so that
Mhm.
there's a point there to make sure that you're really meeting what the organization thinks is an expert.
Brilliant. And I love the piloting of yeah, basically going one step above and beyond. I love that you communicate with the other RMI board members on their approaches. I think we need a lot more of that. And I just wanted to call out that Andre also shared how they're using it. Their approach is 0, don't know. 1 has just basic knowledge. 2 can work under supervision. 3 can work independently. And 4 can teach others. 5 ready to learn. Cool. So thank you very much, Andre, for also sharing. I love that. And I just wanted to also call out that I think it's very beautiful. Emma picked up on Shiv's question. And this is absolutely what we're also hoping to basically allow to happen, for cross-learning, knowledge sharing to happen. So well done. And please, yeah, continue to do so. Let's grow together. That's awesome. Makes me very happy. Cool. We've got 15 minutes in our regular webinar hour left. So Martha, I think skills are without a doubt such an intriguing topic, to the fact that we have already dedicated a whole webinar on this. So thank you so much for kind of sharing your approach, your maybe tips, how you've seen it work well. If we now think about what else, right? So we talked about the chart, we talked about skills inventory. What are some, let's maybe pick 2 more items that are critical before we then move on to the how. What else would you like to kind of put the spotlight on?
What else with being more strategic? I mean, I think with being more strategic, you want to do 2 things. So you want to look at your company's strategy.
Mhm.
Your company probably has an annual strategy that it comes out with. I know ours does. And you want to think about how your organization can plug into that. You want to think about as well, like what are some of the things that support your strategy, right? Like if it's growing in a certain area, you're trying to build new products to market, how does resource management support that? You want to spend some time connecting the big picture to your organization, so that actually, when you're talking to people, it's connecting, right? You're saying this is how we're supporting the organization. And then I think also with strategy, it's pretty cool to do a yearly evaluation on your department's maturity. And as well, if you're getting any feedback from clients, what are your clients saying? Where are there opportunities to improve?
Mhm.
So I think those are pretty cool ways of assessing, having ways to assess what you need to do as your next step. That's a little bit outside of yourself, right? It's a nice mark to say, oh, are we centralized or decentralized, right? I think you can look at that. And I do believe that's part of the maturity curve. You can look at your tools, your processes. Are your processes defined and standardized? Are your roles specialized? And do you have tools to enable your work? So all of those things can get you to the next level of where you need to go as an organization. And then thinking about how you're measuring yourself to say, are we doing well? So we
Mhm.
talked about key performance indicators, your KPIs. So what's your goal for time to staff? versus
Mhm.
what are you, right? Um, and what's your alignment look like? Are some of your resource managers too spread out, too thin? Like, they're covering too many people, or you need to make a business case for your own team to grow, right? So you can do more in-depth support, more timely response. So all of those things I think are really important when you think about where you are as a resource management team and how you want to present out where you're going.
Nice. Awesome. I love that. And thanks for picking up the time to staff as a key metrics again. I know that there is the RMI tool to basically calculate the dollar value that an increase in utilization, yeah, how it impacts your financials, right? Is there any way of translating like time to staff into a dollar value? Is it possible to translate that?
I'm not sure. I mean, I know for sure utilization, it can be, like you said, you can quantify that someone being able to bill to work at more hours per week, within a limit, right? You don't want to go over the standard working hours, but billable rate is definitely a driver of the business. And if people have lower billable rates, then the overhead costs, gets absorbed by your organization. So there's a cost saving mechanism there as you increase your utilization. Your time to staff, I look at being a input driver to projects starting and ending on time.
Mhm.
So that's how I think about time to staff. In some places where we had um, the date of intake and a target start and a target end, then we can look and say, did we meet our time to staff? How long did it take us to get the team fully staffed? And did we change our end date? Did our end date move? And then you can look at that as being a driver to your client satisfaction as well. I mean, so many things feed into hitting an end date, right? You can have scope change or this and that, but I do think that it's a driver and it's a benefit to your organization of being able to kick off a project on time because it's what your clients are expecting.
Exactly. I love that. That's a new one for me. So thank you for sharing a bit more on that. I love it. Cool. Awesome. We're almost coming to the end of the hour. So I just want to share once more, highlight that Martha kindly offered to stay on a bit longer. So if you don't have a hard cut, you're warmly invited to stay here and we'll basically try to cover all the beautiful questions. There's currently 5 I can see in our Q&A. If you have put any questions to the chat, just make sure that they're also in the Q&A so that we can tackle them. Cool. So I want to smoothly shift over to the questions now and see what we've got here. And you can all help me pick the best questions first that are most interesting to you by giving them a thumbs up so we can prioritize together. I will kick off with Shiv because I've seen that someone also answered him in the chat. So Shiv shared, I came across some organizations where there is a role of project manager, and project manager plays the role of resource manager. Not many organizations have specifically the role of resource manager, whether a project manager can also play the role of a resource manager. So maybe from your perspective, Martha, how do these roles work out, and could a project manager also take on the role of resource manager?
Yeah, I've actually been in that situation before, and being in both roles, a resource manager and a project manager who did resourcing. I think it works a little bit different, but if I think it's Shiv wants to add in more detail to help clarify, I think that will be helpful. But what I found is that when I was playing the role of project manager that did resourcing, it was a siloed approach. And I think this happens too in organizations where they don't follow a centralized resource management model, but even less rules and processes, right? So if you're a project manager, you are really thinking about the resources you need to deliver for the work. So I was given a huge project and I had to figure out who's on my project, right? So I had to go talk to different team managers and say, I need somebody who knows SQL, or I need somebody who can build an API, because I knew, we had to build this, right? And so they would help me kind of figure out the skills, and then they would give me the person, and they would say, okay, I'm going to give you this person who can do this work at 25%. And so I knew what the resourcing was for my project, but I didn't really have governance over that person at all,
Mm.
right? So I'm a project manager. You don't really have governance over people who are not in your organization. And so if they got another project and they were, let's say they were not giving me the 25% time, then I would have to go talk to the people manager and said, I really need more of this person's time, right? So you're
Yeah.
balancing, but really with the center of it being your project, the delivery of your project, the on-time delivery of your project. And I'm not really sure, like, I don't really recall in that organization them really looking at utilization. I mean, we did to track our hours, like everybody used to track our like hours. And so we had to put, I worked this many hours. So I guess in total, it could see was the person billing 40 hours a week. But I'm not sure if they were what they were doing with that in that kind of more fragmented model.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, that describes it pretty well. It's a more siloed approach and not holistic. So you might, yeah, try to optimize your own little project
exactly.
at the cost
Yeah,
of
exactly.
other variables. Yeah. So things,
Yeah. And
yeah,
yeah, you can end up looking at that very much like, hey, as a project manager, I want my projects to do well, but like if there's 20 other project managers, I'm not really, like I really want to hit my goal, my on time, I want to have within budget, and so I want to hit my key metrics. So I think that the role of resource manager is really key to looking at things holistically.
yeah, yeah. Nice. Awesome. Thanks so much, both Shiv and Martha. Well done. So let's move on. I see some thumbs up. So that's awesome. I'm gonna pick the one with two, Michelle. Thank you so much, Michelle. She's saying, how do you plan for your annual strategy and plan for growth at an enterprise level and at a department level?
All right. So which question are we on here?
Michelle is wondering, Martha, how do you plan for your annual strategy and
Mhm.
plan for growth at an enterprise level and at a department level?
Yeah, so um, our strategy team does strategic reviews every year. And so we get documents that are really detailing what we're doing as an organization. And so our team will go look at that document and see if there's anything that we need to adjust to. We also um, have different meetings with different parts of the business that may hear like real time information that we can do planning with if we need to pivot. So we have monthly meetings with our finance department. So if there's anything on margin or cost control, we can adapt. We're looking at the same information and we're planning together. And then also our HR people and culture team, we plan with them on skills and hiring. There are some units that are not project based, and so we don't do resource management for them. They're more like strategic leads and fundraisers. So they drive the strategy for their units. We don't need to deploy them to any work. They are more fundraising work, right? So it's a bit different model. So we really focus on our department. We look at, again, our supply and demand. We look at that monthly, and then we're making, decisions based off of what we're seeing and how we can adapt to that. With our conversations with people and culture, we are in that situation where, like, we do the skill survey and help give input to the skill survey, but now this year they're executing the skill survey and they're analyzing the outputs. So together we'll talk about, oh, this is an area we're seeing a lot of demand. Perhaps we do skills training right? And so we get that feedback from the business units too, like where do people need to grow in terms of skill and what training can we offer? And we kind of share that information with our learning team and our people and culture team so that we can be aligned on how we need to across the company augment our skills, improve our skills, and bring in certain type of talent. And so, yeah, I think we didn't talk about that in the charter, but you want to think about those key units. Like finance is always one of the key units that I've partnered with as a resource management department, because if you need to grow, that's the department you're going to have to show your business case to.
Yeah.
You want to have a good partnership there. You want to know what they're seeing, what they're thinking about, so um, you can adapt and support them and what they're seeing too. And then, yeah, your HR department, you want to have good connections there so that if there's a strategy that needs to be deployed across your organization, resource management are not like learning teams, right? So we can't deploy training. We can't procure funds for people to go get certifications, but we'll know that demand is needed there for these certain skills. And then we'll know that if there's a gap there.
Yeah. Oh, that's so beautiful. I really honor how you're really communicating and partnering with those different parts of the business. And I think this is also what makes resource managers so successful, right? As soon as you have that, strong connection with each department that is critical, which is pretty much every department, more or less, the more you're close, connected, communicating, sharing, like pulling on the same kind of string, the more powerful you can be and the business can be. So yeah, thanks for sharing some more details in that space, and thanks, Michelle, for your beautiful question. Awesome. Let's see what else we will choose. I will go with wow, there's so many questions. First of all, thank you all very, very much. I love how engaged you all are. It's such a joy. I'm going to go with the question that was posted as the very first, which is, what strategy advice would you have for a resource manager in the professional services industry? A more broad question. So any strategic strategy advice, what springs to your mind, Martha?
Gosh, yeah, that's a very wide question. I think there's different places you can go with it. But one thing that I think is probably less common is doing some research perhaps on, what trends are happening in different professional services organizations. There's also organizations out there that will do surveys on the market and see what are different organizations doing, how are they thinking about costing. Um, I can't remember the exact organization, but I got a study once that was really defined the margins and how companies were defining their project teams in order to have like a balanced cost structure. So that was really interesting. So I think there's a lot out there that you can research and look at in your organization in terms of how you're executing. And that would be like in addition to all the other things that we kind of mentioned today, because professional services can be so broad. And, if you're in an industry that's specialized, again, we have accounting firms, consulting firms, you probably want to look at what's going on with those industries. And I think it can help you be more strategic.
Yes. Oh my God, that's so true. The better you understand what the business is doing and where it's headed, the better you can play your role as a resource manager. So I love that's again super proactive. So love it. Yes. Cool. Thank you so much, Martha. Let's jump to the next question. Let's see, we've got Michelle again. Thank you. Will you be able to share resources at the end of the webinar? Oh, that's an easy one. Absolutely. Yes. So everything that we have shared, plus some extra ones, we will share with you. Absolutely our pleasure. So thank you to both Martha and Carrie for those resources. They very generously shared them with us, and we will happily share them with you. Nice. Then let's move on to Shiv again. Thank you. Could you please suggest some technical skills that help resource managers to evolve in work and grow professionally? That's a beautiful question. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I think this one, can vary based off what your organization does and what it values. I think that soft skills are really important for resource managers, that those are not necessarily viewed as technical skills, but I think things like negotiation, like can come very in handy because you're probably having to negotiate trade-offs a lot. Um, I think there's a book of like how to get to yes, like that could be a good one. Like, sometimes, you're also talking to your resources and you need them on a project and you want them to be excited about it. And maybe that's not what they want to be doing. So you need to negotiate with them and, get them to that yes. I think also like for my team, like strong analytic skills, like knowing how to calculate utilization. I think like even in this next phase of where we're going, things like understanding billable utilization, non-billable utilization, or productive utilization, non-productive, like all of those, so Excel. One thing I'm trying to learn on the side is also like Tableau and Power BI. So I think those could be extra, things that you might want to learn from a technical side. um, yeah, so I think those could be good things. And then obviously, if you have a resource management tool, understanding how your tool works. If you don't have a resource management tool, or understanding what tools are out in the market and what they do and how it can make it easier for your unit. So I think those are good things to all invest in.
Beautiful. And I love that you're learning those data visualization hacks on the side. I think that's
Yeah, because it's not just about the information, it's about how you communicate the information. How do you make it pop? How do you make it like readily understandable? So I think those are some things that people can continue to grow on. And then obviously like AI, like thinking about AI in your work and how it can streamline your work, I think is a good place as well right now to invest in.
nice. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I can just see in the chat that Sev also shared that he loves Tableau and Salesforce both. And those are his go-to analytical tools. So thank you, Sev, also for sharing in the chat. Nice. Let's move on. And I'm going to pick Umair. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Umair is sharing. In a growing service-based company, we have a challenge to manage existing resources when a new project comes in and we know an existing one is finishing in the near future. The organization wouldn't want to hire new resources, only to bridge that gap for a few weeks. However, it puts a lot of pressure on resources during this overlapping phase. Yeah, and Umair is an engineering manager at an IT company. And there's already Andre with some solutions, but of course also keen to hear from you, Martha. You've probably noticed this happening before, observing it. What have you
Yeah.
done in the past? What has worked well? What hasn't worked so well from your experience?
Yeah, I think there's some good suggestions from Andrew in here. Andrew, sorry. So, I mean, I think I've heard different models for this. I a while ago heard about like a kickoff team. I don't know if that always works for people, but having a team that can scope and start work and then hand it over to the team that's finishing and is like the key for the project. But I would also say really thinking about, is it always that the same team members finishing the work are the ones needed that start the new work? I find sometimes people say we must have this person, we must have Umair, we must have Nora, and it's like, tell me about the skills that you need. Maybe I can find somebody who has the skills, who can help, right? And so I think it's really getting down to what are the skills? Can I find other resources that have the skills? And maybe have a little bit of downtime in between during the time when the project is kicking off, and then you can bring the team members. Because I do think you risk burnout if you're constantly having people finish projects, which usually at the end of a project is a big spike of work. And at the beginning, the scoping and the kickoff, it can be intense too. So there are two intense times where you have people in this hamster wheel, if you will.
Yes, thumbs
So
up for that.
one thing is thinking about hourly employees. Like, it doesn't have to be that everybody is a full-time employee. You can have some people who are hourly and their, contracts may be able to fluctuate. And those people, you want them, if you have flex resources in this kind of way, you want them to be generalists, right? You want them to be able to fit into multiple bodies of work. So you really want to think about your demand and what's needed and what's the most needed where you can align these people. So along with that, we've even, like, I think we had a time where we were like way, oh, like we didn't want to hire because we had like a short-term spike in work, and we thought, but we didn't end up doing it. But we thought also about third-party firms
Mhm.
where they have people that they recruit, they screen them, and you're just going to the third party to, once they're screened with you, to deploy whoever, because they've already done the work to deploy, I mean, to do the screening. They're doing the payroll. You're just paying them a flat rate, right, based off the hours worked. So those could be some options there.
Very nice. Thank you so much, Martha. And I just want to also honor and appreciate Andre. Thank you for sharing your solutions. So some ideas from you, keep some resources on the bench for such cases. Absolutely, if you can afford that. Two, use partners' resources temporarily, just like you mentioned. Three, keep your team not fully loaded for such cases. So maybe what is the target utilization and can you decrease it so that you have more flexibility? Absolutely. For proposed overtimes where applicable. So some developer will be engaged in old and new projects. Very cool. So thanks both of you very much. And thanks, Umair, for your question. Cool. Nice. So we've got two last questions. Let's go with Dylan. So thank you, Dylan. Dylan is sharing, I'm curious to hear more about who is responsible for allocating resources to projects. If it's the colleagues, how compliant are they? What have you done to improve adoption of accurate allocations?
Yeah, great question. Our RM function is accountable to allocating people to projects. How compliant are they? I mean, I would say that there is a percent of projects where the scoping, like in the scoping phase, people are named. We have gotten more involved in ensuring that we have a view into proposals as they're going out. And that's really to help us make sure people aren't getting over allocated and make sure that, projects are sticking to the guidelines that we want to see. Um, Meaning, we want to see people with meaningful allocations, not tiny allocations, right? We don't want someone to be across 10 projects, for example. We want
Yes.
them to be across 3 or 4. And so that's become a work balance and efficiency initiative for the organization. It's more work balance, if I really had to be honest with it. But it leads to better delivery is what we're seeing. And so we'll take a look at that to ensure, but we won't say, oh, you put Jill on your project and we didn't approve. We might say, Jill's overbooked. We
Mhm.
can give you an opening. Let's talk about the skills needed. So we do, that's kind of our way in. But like Andre, we are the only department other than like finance that has the bird's eye view of how people are allocated. Um, the staff members that we have though are very engaged. And so at times, like if we'll say, hey, you're over allocated, they'll say, okay, let me see where I can reduce. And
Mhm.
so they're to us as well. So we partner with our units and our staff members. Although, if the tie, there's a tie that needs to be broken, we have the vote. We get
And I think what you're doing extremely well is to create trusted relationships, and which is at the heart of being able to serve the business well as a resource manager. So I think this is why you've got such great alignment with basically the decisions being made and the recommendations being shared. So thanks, Dylan, thanks, Martha, and thanks, Andre, for questions and answers. I love that. Cool. And we're coming to the final question of today. So thanks everyone who's still here. I can see there are 26 people still in the room. I love it. Thank you, thank you, thank you. That's super exciting. So I'm completely going to mispronounce the name. I'm just going to call you Olu. I hope that's okay, a little bit shorter. The role of resource manager is a bit similar to human resource manager, considering their functionalities. As human resource generalist in my current company, how can I shift into this role while maintaining my current role? And are there certifications or trainings to enable deeper learning of resource management? Secondly, considering the rate of advancement and the existence of AI, what are assurance of success in this role? Beautiful question to wrap up. Thank you, all you.
What I found, okay, so there's what I've seen is that there's three different types of roles. There's human resources, right? And I think that that's really aligned to talent management practices. So the main certification there is SHRM here in the US. I don't know if there's one in Europe or in other countries, but SHRM is the major certification body for HR practices. There's legal things that are considered in that. And I think that's really different than resource management. Resource management, I think, I would say, has more technical experience. Like, so we're pulling utilization. I don't think HR managers are doing that. I wouldn't want them to do that. I think focus on the people, focus on development, hiring practices, making sure people are performing, managing the annual review process and things like that. Whereas we're looking at utilization and staffing, right, as some just key overhead things, overarching areas. Now, where we overlap and we had to get really nuanced with this with our people and culture or HR department is the skills management.
Mhm.
Both departments care about skills and how people are developing.
Mhm.
We care that it helps us deliver outcomes and projects on time, right? And we care about costing, right? Now, HR may think more about costing within standard ranges for roles and compliance to that. So they care about a little bit of a different slant on when it comes to costing. We think about project budget and margin and things like that.
Yeah.
Um, Now, I have seen some roles, notably at some consulting companies, where they are kind of like human resource managers. So you look at it and you say, okay, this role's kind of in the middle. They may do some uh, efficient deployment. They may do some projections on growth, but I don't think it's much is it embedded in the numbers as much as like for example, how my team manages our utilization. I think they're more in, okay, I need to hire, a unit came to me to hire, I want to make sure the person's deployed, but they're not really looking at the metrics on a month to month and managing those details or redeploying the person. Like, so I think like when I've looked at these roles, they didn't work for me when the person came in and applied for my roles, just because like I look at a lot of analytics. We do more analytics. Than your traditional HR manager or your human resources manager. Certification for resource management, the RMCP is the big certification there. And it's resource management capacity planning certification from the RMI. I will say there's also, I think, a LinkedIn class now offered that's like intro to resource management. So all it may want to look at that to figure out, okay, do I want to move into this role and kind of shift into resource management versus human resource management. Um, and in terms of like future demand and what AI is going to do, I think we're all kind of trying to figure it out in terms of what will, go into the future and where we can, as people, leverage AI to help us do better work. Um, I don't see human resources being replaced by AI just because there's so many people centered aspects to human resources. And I don't really see resource management being deployed, but I do think that AI can help us find people who can deliver the work best um, by using things like machine learning and things of that nature. So there's a lot there in the question. Um, yeah, and I think like as all of us in across different industries, even project management, we want to stay attuned and get trained on AI so that we can figure out how to use it for our benefit to be better and faster.
Nice. Thank you so much. And thank you for also mentioning the LinkedIn training. Maybe someone who's still here in the room can find it by Andrea Davis, I believe. She just launched a new training, and I just want, yeah, to also give her some spotlight. She's such a phenomenal person, and it's very worthwhile checking out her program. So if someone could pop the link into the chat, definitely check it out. Very, very valuable stuff there. Cool. And with that, we have come to the end of such a wonderful session. I think this has been the session probably with the most questions asked. So thanks all of you who have asked questions. They were super inspiring and insightful. And Martha, thank you so much for joining and for sharing all of your expertise in such an authentic and practical, helpful way. I just love listening to you. I always admire your work. Thank you so much. And yeah, just a quick shout out to our webinar that's coming up next month. We would also love to see you there. So just gonna quickly share my screen with you. We've got Laura Dean Smith and Kim Randall joining us for a very cool session on how to become a strategic leader in resource management. So yeah, we would love to have you back. And Martha, thank you, thank you, thank you. Unfortunately, Carrie didn't make it through the firewall, but she definitely was here with us in spirit. She also helped us so much in preparing for the session. So a lot of the resources that we will share are also based on her experience and expertise. So thanks both of you very much. Martha here in the room, Carrie with us in our hearts.
Yes, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. And I love to see all the comments and energy today in the chat. So
Yeah,
thank you for that.
it's been super fun. Thank you, everyone, and have a beautiful rest of your day wherever you are in the world. Take good care.